To continue on that point about all of that neurodiversity literature serving as a brainwashing to create a kind of culture with neurotypical, as they would say, women, girls in high school and in middle school to date autistic males because it's like they're Jewish or they're, it's someone with money, or it's like I was saying, right? It's all brainwashing that these are the people. When you see someone that's sort of like, and they start watering in their panties because that's a person that's right, they're eugenic. That's autistic is eugenic, like Jewish is eugenic. Ashkenazi Jew, higher IQ by about 10 to 15 points. He knows calculus innately, and I'm going to talk a little bit about that. Well, everybody does, and that's a problem with teaching arithmetic in elementary, and the problem with elementary school in general is it really is to take a perfect genius brain, which everybody has, and make it linear so that it can fit into slavery. I digress. But then we're going to talk about that. And we're going to talk about a little bit of, I always read the first chapter of every book. I opened up some textbooks on calculus at the library, the public library and the SDSU Library. We're going to look at something. That's for the next video. But let's continue on with this point. I wanted to also say that another problem that gets created is, and this was interesting, in my era, because of how split brain I was. And again, it would have been very different if I could have been more physically active early and if I had someone, and yes, he's complaining, I think we should just talk about the way things could have been if things were different. What can you do? Except take that, try to redo your childhood hypnotically with more influence from a father figure instead of just being raised by a single mother. And there was a kid, and you just tell, they pushed him through because he was Hawaiian at West Oʻahu, and so he was getting his degree in sociology, and his senior thesis, he was an honors student, was about the problem of single mother. And when he gave his oral defense of it, or it's not a PhD, but when he had to do like oral defense, he was like, it's supposed to be, what's the opposite of value laden? A value neutral, but you could just tell it was all about him. And he was reading from this paper, and he was like, and he started like get tears in his eyes when I gotta tell the story in another book one day. He got tears in his eyes, and then he's like trying to hold back the tears as he's reading from you could really tell that his research topic was not value neutral. Anyway, if I had been more physically active, it would have changed everything, because you're picking up on an entirely different and faster universe, wherein it may have been the other part of my brain that on the bogus full wheelchair IQ test, when a psychologist sits you in front of a piece of paper and takes a perfect, endless spinning wheelchair of energy and makes up bullshit about what it could pull from the universe when it was contained, sitting, looking good, sitting still, sit still. The problem with elementary school students sitting still. You become a reception crystal for universal intelligence when you're moving quickly and you're active and spontaneous, and that's something that can't be reflected on one of these tests ever, because you're a wheelchair, but you need to be wheelchairing everybody. That's something you can't measure on one of these tests. You'll never be able to measure that on one of these tests. That's only measured in your life, your bank accounts, your friendships, your experience of life, your ability to get out there, wheelchair woman across the table from you at a restaurant, look good while dining, which I'm not. Alex Jones always talked about. I dibble drinking food on myself in a restaurant. I'm a little bit clumsy, basically, but you can work those kinks out of you, and you have to practice them. And that's what I was trying to do, and I would have done, but it's just, they don't teach dining. You see these beautiful women on Facebook that are military and in all these places, like, based in Hickam or based in Wheeler, and they're, Marine or they're, Marine Corps base, Kāneʻohe on Oʻahu. And what my theory is that what they would do is most of them like have a ring on their finger already, or they're not going to marry someone that they would meet on Facebook, because if you're meeting on Facebook, there's a problem right there. Just the same thing with the problem with the IQ test. If you're doing Facebook for your human connections, it doesn't work. It doesn't work that way. You got to get out there and touch life. You got to get out there and touch people and touch the world. And if you wouldn't have to meet on Facebook unless you were one of these people that were medicated, slowed down, and encouraged by the institution of psychiatry to live that way, to protect the people from being wheelchaired by your endless spinning energy, so that your DNA doesn't end up in one of their baby boxes for some reason, end up gestating for 9 months and producing another rapist like you. That's what a psychiatrist is for, is to prevent that. And so to continue on that point, because we look good telling our personal assistants things, I said, I don't want a skills trainer because they're going to give me socioeconomically appropriate skills training. And it's to, in my case, they did that to me because I was into elite people. I was into elite experiences. Like, well, let's go to a expensive restaurant. And they opened up so many after I got out of high school and I got out of college, and we were watching Ward Village go up. We were watching the HCDA Kakaʻako development district go up by the waterfront, and there's all these restaurants, and this is an experience that I began to see. And it was not that it wasn't there before. We had Restaurant Row, but as I tracked development, I realized there's something wrong with my development, and what they were doing for my development was taking development the wrong way, or preventing it from happening, which as time goes on, accumulation of change, rate of change. I read the first 2 chapters of every book. But that's what they need to be drilling into kids in elementary. And we'll talk about that in a separate video. That the cultural, a culture naturally would begin to develop even without that brainwashing, because we look so good, dressed professionally, telling our servants, not skills trainers or personal assistants. This was something they came out with for borderline people, that they all need personal assistance. And that's why I talk about Michael Savage a lot. Like that's something he would rail against. Well, no, you need a job appropriate for you, and you need to have that part of your brain slowed down and brought into alignment with all the other parts of the brain, even if you don't like it, so that you can just be sitting in front of a computer and doing things slowly and not going to a club because you contribute more value to society economically, and that's what it's based on. Well, no, they're like, why can't we engineer the economy to make the human experience available to as many people as possible? And some people are going to say, what about people in wheelchairs? Well, I am not in a wheelchair, and therefore the fact that I can put one foot in front of the other, and that I've learned to do it very well, pretty damn well for that matter, by working with dancers and people that study this kind of stuff. That's what my IEP, so to speak, or my lifelong accommodation, my IDEA needs to include, that I can put one foot in front of the other and get my hands on people and the money to do it. But girls in middle school, girls in high school start to look at the autistic child, or the borderline child that has the personal assistant with the computer that he can tell. It looks like a business executive. I tell my assistant to do this, it gets done, and they're like, whoa, I gotta do that myself, and I have to entrain my brain in writing something in my planner, and the person is just so sleek looking, and the assistant puts the computer in the bag, slings it around the shoulder, and he's got his own, entourage of people. And yes, if it's done businessly, and that's why I wanted them dressed like in a suit. I wanted to wear a suit. I wanted them in a suit. I wanted to have the briefcase. They carry the briefcase. I don't carry the briefcase. They've got the computer. I tell them what to do. They do it, because that's the image it starts to create. But and there's another factor, which is that they're retarded. These people that are behavior technicians, or the skills trainers, as they would call them, they're retarded, and they don't even have college degrees in a lot of cases. They're like paraprofessionals, and they're hired by the staffing agencies basically that take all this money from the counties, and they just funnel it to these people to sit there and do redirecting people according to what the IEP says. But I said, if we could do it businessly for me, if we could do it businessly instead of autistically, let's do it businessly, women would start to be like, whoa, this guy's like CEO in 1964, where they had techno song. Was it Kraftwerk that had? I don't know. It wasn't Kraftwerk. Whoever had that techno song, the CEO in 1960, where Donald Trump was dancing to that. And so that's something that people need to be aware of too, is that's something that would start to happen if they did it humanely.